Hello everyone, I wanted to talk to you all today about the importance of adopting our canine friends. And my name is Jamie. My sources for this speech would include PETA, Huffington Post, Disconnected Canines, the American Kennel Club, and Insurance Information Institute, as well as my own personal experience. In this speech, I will talk about the pros and cons of breeding versus rescuing a dog. It seems many people are against dog breeding or feel that it's politically correct to rescue a dog instead of getting them from a breeder. I will go into details of the different shelters and what types, as well as what goes on within those walls. I will also discuss breeders and how those typically work and what goes on there as well. I will proceed to talk about a Frisbee dog team that I thought was actually pretty cool. They actually inspired me to talk about this topic today. And to finish off, I'll finish with a recap of everything I covered today. My household is just one of 60.7 million households that have a dog, according to the Insurance Information Institute, though I'm unsure whether or not those dogs are rescues or from breeders. I feel like that's almost impossible to know, but personally we've had 3 dogs, and I've only grown up with 2 technically that I remember. The first one was Cisco, and we got her from a friend whose dog had puppies. We got Coco, which was the first dog I remember, who we got her from a friend who didn't want her because she wasn't a purebred. And then we got Snowball from a breeder. So I guess you could say we were a blended household. This is not the same for everyone. Some families believe in rescuing dogs and only housing strays or rescues, which I personally think is a great idea. But for this speech, I wish to discuss the different types of animal shelters. So the first one is an open admission shelter. These shelters, according to PETA, take in any animals, they take in all animals, hence open admissions, and they reassure frightened animals. They also treat the sick or injured, and if they can't help the dog, they peacefully end the suffering. But hey, they do consider all of the animals' special emotional and physical needs. For what that's worth, PETA also says that less fortunate animals end up in pitiful shelters that are pretty much shacks that protect them from the elements of the outside. And that would be about it. For other shelters, well, the other shelter type would be a no-kill shelter. And these shelters don't technically euthanize they don't euthanize their animals, but they turn away those that they would consider unadoptable. PETA states a few stories of owners who were turned away from these shelters and took care of their animals themselves. One man in Pennsylvania took his dog to a no-kill shelter and was told to return 2 weeks later. He did not like that. He grabbed the dog, hopped in his truck, and proceeded to run over the dog at the nearest intersection. Ironically, the shelter workers had to collect the remains of the dog themselves, which I think is ironic because it's the dog they had just turned away. So while these no-kill shelters may be supported to house animals, they're not doing much better than an open admission shelter. While some get turned away, those that are accepted may end up staying in cages for months or even years. PETA states that a no-kill shelter here in North Carolina actually documented that their animals were suffering from systematic abuse and neglect and were deprived of veterinary care. I would say if you have to give up an animal for whatever reason that you may have, find it a home where you know that they will be loved and you know that they will be taken care of correctly and just loved. Or if you are looking for a loving dog, I would say get one from a rescue or a shelter of any kind. Typically, they'll love you and play with you no matter what. So to clarify, not all shelters are good. Pretty much none of them are. But carrying on, your other option may be a breeder. So some may see this as adding to the overpopulation of dogs, according to PETA. PETA also feels that it sacrifices the animal's health. Some breeds can have consistent personality traits, like how chows are really overprotective or how golden retrievers are overly excited all of the time. But they can also have genetic abnormalities as well that are also consistent or could be consistent. These genetic abnormalities may include cancer, heart murmurs, or hip dysplasia. It could even include blindness, deafness, or epilepsy. But that does not mean that your purebred is guaranteed to have anything wrong. These people, according to HuffPost, have a fanciful respect for a specific breed of dog, which is why they would go into breeding the dogs. And they take very good care of them, and they are very selective as to who takes their dogs when the dogs have puppies. They are also very firm as to how you are to take care of them once you get home. Oftentimes these dogs are purebred, but sometimes they may be some sort of exotic mix. Like, we have a Maltese poodle. He's not that exotic. He's kind of odd, but we love him very much, and he's not a purebred. But sometimes you may pay the price for having a purebred. But these are all reasons to be careful as to who you get your dog from. On a good note, they do not contribute to homeless dog populations. They find a home for every dog. And the biggest pro that I see here would be the fact that they might be trained depending on the certain age you get them at or the breeder you get them from. But obviously, if you get a puppy, they're probably not going to know any better. They're puppies. So, after covering all the shelters and all the breeds, the last topic I have for you today is a relatively short one. But I went to the fair a week or so ago, and I found out about this dog competition team, technically, called Disconnected Canines. And apparently, they're known worldwide. But they're a rescue team, which is what I think makes them stand out from any kind of disc dog team. And they're a team of Frisbee champion rescue dogs, which I think is really cool. They rescue dogs from shelters or those who didn't want them because they say weren't purebred, or they even take in strays. And they train them and they test them to make sure they're certified. And while they do have their show-winning dogs that win the competitions and play Frisbee, which I think all of their dogs actually play Frisbee or enjoy Frisbee, they do have dogs up for adoption. And here's the part that I think personally is really cool. Not only are they up for adoption, but they are house-trained and certified. But you don't just pick your dog out. You don't just go and say, hey, I want that dog. No. They'll send you an email of a list of questions regarding your household, how you are, your family, if there are kids, will it be inside, will it be outside, will you play Frisbee, will you walk it, what kind of things you'll do with the dog, and they will match you with a dog that they think best suits your needs and your wishes as well as your household. The part that I think was kind of crazy at first, but I did look into it, and their website said that it was true, but they've never charged anyone for adopting one of their dogs. They run what they do off of merchandise sales and donations, which I think is pretty cool. So all they expect out of adopting a dog is a thank you. So to sum up all of what I just talked about, most shelters have pros and cons that are the same, most of them will take in all animals. Well, open admissions take in all animals. But the con, some animals are put down. No-kill shelters, animals are not put down, but they are turned away, and they do not accept all animals depending on their needs. And then breeders, you got to be careful as to who you get them from. But ultimately, if you had to, I would say get a dog from a rescue shelter or even a shelter in general because they feel like they need a home the most. So a rescue shelter would be my vote. But ultimately, you have to get what works best for you. And so, yeah, just rescue a dog today.